who have all abilities in management and government, and who are very expert in politics and shastra, and just, very, very learned personalities in all phases of knowledge. If you can engage these boys, then you will develop a very opulent kingdom. Now, as I mentioned the last time we spoke, and I had spoken with Dhruva Maharaj, and we were trying to figure out the age, we figured that at this point the young boys were in their mid to late 20s. They were still relatively young men, but very, very sharp. So this was why he wanted them. So in this way, he practically coerced the two brothers into government service. And as we also mentioned, there were many other Vaishnava Brahmins at the time that had been more or less tricked or forced into the service with the Muslim government at that time, just to protect the rest of the village. They would sometimes threaten, if you don't serve me, then we will go and cause a big disturbance to your family and to the other village Brahmins like that. So in this way, the two boys took up the service and became known by the name Dabir Kash and Shakir Malik. Shakir Malik, of course, being Santosh, who would eventually become Sanatan, and Dabir Kash being Amar, who would eventually become Rupa. So for some time they were engaged in the service, and at this time they would be very anxious to meet Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Now, we shouldn't misunderstand that they did not have Krishna consciousness present in their life prior to that. These boys were very Krishna conscious. The place in Ramkeli where they lived, there was many forested areas, and there were two very large ponds that they had built their houses on. Actually, it wasn't just houses, they were like mansions, and this is where they lived and managed the government from. And the two ponds, they gave the name Shamkund Radhakund, because they were next to each other, because the two brothers lived right next to each other. And the surrounding forest, they gave the names of the different Vrindavan forests like this. So the deity they worshipped in their home, they named Madan Mohan. So in this way, they were developing what they called a Gupta Vrindavan, a hidden Vrindavan, that in their hearts and minds would keep them fixed in their Krishna consciousness. So after some time, they came to know that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had taken sannyas and was living in Puri, so they wrote a letter to him. And they requested in the letter, that you must please deliver us. We're in this very, very difficult, unfortunate situation in this world. We're forced into the government service of these Muslims. We are keeping most abominable association due to this service. Please, you come and deliver us. And Sri Chaitanya wrote them back a very nice letter. And he said to them in this letter, he says, as a woman who is attached to another man, a paramour, makes a show of being very, very devoted to her husband, so you should also, while being internally attached to the lotus feet of Sri Krishna, externally make a show of being engaged in your worldly duties and in the management of the government. Krishna will soon bestow his mercy on you in short time. So he encouraged them like this. So they were very, very excited. So all right, we'll follow through. In due course of time, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took his associates and began to leave for Puri. And in leaving from Puri. And in leaving from Puri, he wanted to travel to Ramkeli. Now, specifically, his purpose in his words and in his mind was to deliver these two brothers. But, by dint of going on pilgrimage to Vrindavan or South India, or traveling in this way and that way, whatever, this was his excuse for leaving Puri. So he stopped in Ramkeli, and as we mentioned in the story of Sanatana Goswami, he had an entourage of thousands. Thousands of devotees were traveling with him. Many of you may have gone on the Vrindavan Parikram. And the Vrindavan Parikram is very, very sweet when you have a small number of devotees, maybe a large number of devotees. But sometimes you'll have hundreds of devotees. Matter of fact, there's one Parikram coming in Vrindavan. There's 4,000 devotees coming. So this becomes very, very crowded and becomes very difficult to get around and this and that. So in this way, quite a notice was made that, oh, this sadhu's coming. He's got this big entourage. So the Hussain Shah, he began to notice. So he asked his immediate advisor, whose name was Keshava Chatri. Keshava Chatri was another Vaishnava Brahmin that had been engaged. And he said to him, who is this sadhu? This great saintly person that brings such crowds with him. Now Keshava Chatri, he understood the mind, because he's the personal advisor of the Shah, and he understood the mind of the Shah, because the Shah was a warrior, and very envious personality by his nature. And so he just dismissed, oh, he's just some fanatic saint, and people kind of follow him around, but he doesn't mean anything important. I wouldn't pay any attention to him if I were you. Trying to dissuade him from taking an interest in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and possibly causing trouble. But the Shah didn't buy it. The Shah was smart. He was not a dumb fellow. So he went to Rupa Goswami, who was his minister, his prime minister, if you will, chief minister, whatever you want to call him. And he said to him, who is this saintly person? And Rupa Goswami gave a very interesting answer. He said, you are the king. You are the representative of the personality of Godhead. So why are you asking me this question? You should ask in your own heart, what do you think the answer is? And so in this way, he could understand very clearly that this is a very saintly personality. Maybe not of his own tradition of the Muslim faith, but he can understand this is a great Hindu saint here. So in this way, Rupa and Keshava Chatri both sent message to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that, you should cautiously move on. But of course, before leaving, he met with Rupa and Sanatana. And it mentions that when the two brothers came before him, they tied rope around their neck. Now, there's very important significance in this. This is a symptom of their humility. Because when you have some cattle, particularly if you go to Vrindavan and do Govardhan Parakram, you see the young cowherd boys, they have their cows. And how are they securing these cows? With a rope around the neck. Actually, one time, the last time I went to Govardhan, I found a rope from around the neck of a cow. I found it laying on the ground, and you could see, yes, this is what it was used for, and I kept it, and I kept it. I took it all the way around Govardhan. And then at the end I thought, oh, I don't need to keep this, I threw it away. And I regret to this day I could have had a rope that was used to secure a cow of Govardhan. At any rate, another story. So, what happened then was that they went before Lord Chaitanya, because if you have an animal that you want to keep secure, that you don't want to run wild, and that you want to control, you put a rope around their neck. And this is the way they submit to the owner. So in this way, Rupa and Sanatana submitted themselves before Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Not externally by that method, but also with very sweet words and very wonderful prayers like that. And so Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu spoke with them and encouraged them in their development of devotional service like that. And then eventually he left. But he told them beforehand, before he left, he said, whatever you do, you should try to go to Vrindavan. Now, when he left, then Rupa and Anupam decided they couldn't bear it anymore. They had to break away from the service. And somehow or another, they extricated themselves from the service of the Shah and went off to Vrindavan. Now, they left a message, as we mentioned last time, for Sanatana Goswami, that whatever you do, get out of there. Time has come. Time to go. And Rupa Goswami gave a very nice example because, as I mentioned, he was the prime minister, which means he had accumulated quite a bit of wealth. I mean, they had personal wealth, and then they were being paid quite sumptuously by the king. Very, very nicely. A handsome salary, if you will. And so in this way, he took all that he had, and he divided it in half. And it mentions that 50% he gave to the service of the Vaishnavas. This is where, in our ISKCON language and in Srila Prabhupada's instructions about giving 50%. The 50% of his savings he gave to the Vaishnavas. 25% he used for the service of the family. And then 25% he stashed for emergencies. Put it in savings, so to speak. So that emergencies, as we mentioned last time again, was with a banker / grocer who had so many gold coins. And these were used at a later time by Sanatana Goswami to free himself when he wasn't able to get out. So in this way, then Rupa and Anupam, they went on to Vrindavan. And they went to Vrindavan and arrived there and spent 1 month going around the Braj Mandala area. Now, of course, at that time, as we've spoken many times before, it's very important to remove from our mind this picture we have of Vrindavan. Loi Bazaar, Mahaprabhu Bazaar, Banki Bahari Mandir, all of these things, we have to remove that because none of it existed. It was not even known where any of the holy places were located. I mean, it was known that the Brajanav, the grandson of Krishna, had established many deities, but where are these deities? No one knew. Nothing was there. So they simply wandered about this beautiful land, spend a month, bathe Jamuna, and this, that, and the other, go to Govardhan. I mean, these places were known because they're very prominent. Excuse me. So then after 1 month they went to Puri. Now on the way to Puri they stopped in Prayag. And in Prayag they met Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who had also come to Prayag. If you remember when we spoke about Lokanath, Lokanath had gone to Vrindavan first, Lokanath and Bhugarba. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had gone to South India, and Lokanath wanted to go to South India. So he went to South India, but he found that Lord Chaitanya had already left and gone to back to Vrindavan. So then he went to Vrindavan, but he found that Lord Chaitanya had left and gone to Prayag. So then he went to Prayag. So in Prayag, the same place is where Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Rupa Goswami meet. And in their meeting, it's described very elaborately in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the wonderful instructions that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives to Rupa. It's also at the same time that Anupam leaves his body. Anupam is the first to depart of all of these brothers, Sanatana, Rupa, and any of the other Goswamis. Very, very early on, he leaves the scene. So while traveling in this way from Prayag to Puri, in his mind, Rupa Goswami begins to develop the outline for two very, very important plays, Vidagdha Madhava and Lalita Madhava. These are considered to be two of the most important works of Rupa Goswami. And so he began to develop these ideas and, kind of concentrate on them and how he arranged them like that. So then he arrived in Puri, and it mentions that he stayed for about 1 year in Jagannath Puri. And during that time, Lord Chaitanya met with him. And Lord Chaitanya gave him 4 very specific instructions. He told him to go to Vrindavan, and he wanted him to do 4 particular things while he was in Vrindavan. The first thing was to uncover the pastime places of Sri Krishna. The second thing was to install deities and arrange for their worship. The third thing was to compile the Bhakti Shastras. And the fourth thing was to propagate the rules of devotional life. In other words, to set standards for how one lives in the process of devotional service. Now, most of the Goswamis, not all of them, but most of the Goswamis had been through family life, if you will, in the sense of, managing this and being surrounded by family and all this opulence. So they had some understanding of how to balance these things properly with the pursuit of devotional service. So we'll see, particularly Gopal Bhatta, growing up in the family that he did. So we'll see later how these things come to pass. So in this way, after being instructed by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he then went to Vrindavan. And he arrived in Vrindavan, and very, very wonderful there. It mentions, let me just get a drink of water, excuse me.
There's a question.
Excuse me. Oh, we have a question here. Kevan is asking, when you say install deities, do you mean build shrines? Well, you have to build temples to install deities. So yes, as we'll see in the story, both of those things took place in that they installed or initiated the worship of different deities, and they also built grand temples for those deities. So we'll get to those points there. So when they arrived in Vrindavan, Rupa Goswami, he was wandering all about. As I mentioned, there wasn't much of a structure. There wasn't really anything there, and he wanted to understand how to, imbibe this mood of writing the Shastras of Lord Chaitanya and how to discover these holy places. So he was not being very successful. There was no infrastructure of associates or guides to show you, this is where this pastime took place. And so he was feeling a little bit distressed, a little bit remorseful. And so it mentions that he was sitting one place and chanting, and you could see that, sometimes you look at a person, you kind of know that they're a little depressed. Just like when Srila Prabhupada was first establishing ISKCON in New York in the very early days in the 1960s. And in the very beginning, it was hard for Prabhupada. He had come to America, and he was just arriving here at the beginning of the winter. I don't know how many of you have experienced a winter in New York, but I experienced about 13 of them. And they could be really bitter. And Prabhupada had never experienced snow or anything like that. And it's so difficult. And sometimes he would go down to the boat docks where the boat had come and dropped him off. He would inquire when the next boat was leaving. When is the boat returning to Vrindavan? And after a few times of this, the man in the information booth said, Swami, you're coming and asking, but you're not going anywhere. oh, I can see that, you're just coming and asking, but you're not going to get on the boat. So in this way, Prabhupada was trying to seek a little, inspiration like this. He was a little distressed in one sense, a spiritual sense, that, things not taking off quite right, quite as fast as he wanted. So in the same way, Rupa Goswami was feeling some anxiety like this. So one day he was visited by one little cowherd boy. And as I mentioned, they understood that all these deities are around Vrindavan. He wasn't having any success finding them. So anyway, he was sitting there and he was doing his chanting, and he heard this little cowherd boy, very beautiful cowherd boy, come on. He said, "Hey, Swamiji!" And he looked up and he said, "Why are you looking so sad?" And he thought, such a beautiful young cowherd boy. What a wonderful, charming voice. And, immediately upon hearing the voice, his melancholy mood broke and his heart felt a little bit enlivened. And then he said, well, I've been sent by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to come to Vrindavan, and he has specifically asked me to, find the different holy places of Krishna's pastimes and to install deities and write shastras, and I haven't been successful in any of it, and I'm feeling a little bit, distant. And the cowherd boy said, "Oh, Swami," he said, "you just come with me. I think I can solve your problems." So he took him to one spot, and he said, the place was called Gomatila. Gomatila is the name of the place. And he told the cowherd boy, brought him, he said, "Look over there." And Rupa Goswami looked, and he said, every day one Surabi cow comes from the woods and squats over this little mound of earth and relieves her milk bag. And all the milk goes right into this little mound and disappears. And then she goes away. I think what you're looking for must be there. And Rupa Goswami thought, and as he turned to thank the cowherd boy was gone. So he thought, said this could be possible. So he spent the day there, and then the next morning, early in the morning, he had come there, and he was a little bit in hiding because he didn't want to startle this cow if it came. So sure enough, out of the forest came this Surabi cow, beautiful Surabi cow, white like an ocean of milk with beautifully formed horns, and milk bag just completely full. And the cow came up to this little mound and kind of spread her legs and released all the milk, just let all the milk flow right out of her milk bag under this little mound, and it all just disappeared right in there. And Rupa Goswami said, "It's true. The cowherd boy was right. Oh, this is so wonderful." So he immediately ran to the adjoining village, and he got all of the townspeople, the cowherd men there, they're just cowherd people, and he encouraged them, please, you must come and help me bring shovels and rakes and so on and so on. So they came, and they began to dig. And they dug very, very carefully and very nicely, and, this way, they actually uncovered the deity of Sri Govindaji. And when the first hints of the form of Govindaji began to be shown, all the devotees said, "Oh, Hari, Hari, Hari," very, very blissful, very joyful. And they're digging, and so they uncover a little more, and then a little more, and then all the way, and the beautiful form of Govinda was there. Now, those of you that have had the opportunity to go to Jaipur have seen this deity of Govindaji. He's so, so beautiful, such a very nice form. So immediately, they arranged, and Rupa Goswami began to recite various prayers and glorification, Brahma Samhita, and other types of prayers. And throughout the area of Vrindavan, the word began to spread to the other Goswamis living in different places about the discovery of the Govindaji deity. So in this way, everyone came in, and it actually says that demigods began to appear. They took on mortal forms just to be able to come and see the wonderful form of this Govinda deity. So immediately, Rupa Goswami wrote to Mahaprabhu in Jagannath Puri and told him, he said, "I've had this great fortune. I've uncovered the deity of Govinda, and in this way, I'm now becoming very much focused and alive in this." So when Mahaprabhu got this, he was very, very ecstatic, it says, when he read the letter. So in the meantime, as the deity was established, Rupa Goswami arranged immediately, just like we saw in the pastimes of Madhavendra Puri, that he arranged for the villagers to come and assist in worshiping the deity and, performing the abhishek and milk and yogurt and flour and like that. So when Mahaprabhu got the letter, he took his one of his servants, Kashishwar Pandit, and he sent him to Vrindavan. "You go and assist Rupa Goswami in the worship of the Govinda deity." So Kashishwar Pandit came to Vrindavan and assisted him in that way. So, of course, at this similar time frame, Sanatana Goswami had come to Vrindavan in due course, and He had also uncovered the Madan Mohan deity, as we mentioned, from the Damodar Chobe family, and how they were playing with the deity like a young child in the family, and he tried to instruct them proper worship, and they couldn't do. And then anyway, one day the deity let it be known to Damodar Chobe that he wanted to go and stay with Sanatana. So now Sanatana had his Madan Mohan, and Rupa Goswami had his Govindaji deity. And being very satisfied this way, they now both sat down and under the protection, guidance, and inspiration of these deities began to write the Bhakti Shastras. And at this time their writing just took on such amazing qualities, and they began to churn out all of these different literatures. We'll get to a little list of them later. And of course, in due course of time, they were establishing different things, and people were coming and visiting, and different people would come through Vrindavan, of course, because it was known Vrindavan was there, and it was known Vrindavan was what it was, but there was just nothing there yet. No buildings or anything like that. So, anyway, in this way, Sri Vallabhacharya from the Vishnu Swami Sampradaya, he came to visit. And so, of course, Vallabhacharya is a very learned personality. And so he sat down with Rupa Goswami, and the two of them spent many, many hours discussing Krishna Katha. Now, of course, we'll remember that, I just going to address a question here before I move on to this point. Joseph has asked that, how old were Rupa and Sanatana Goswami around this time? This is a very good question, Joseph, and I have spent hours with a couple of my devotee associates in this regards, particularly Dhruva Maharaj, trying to ascertain exactly how old were they. To the best of our knowledge, to the best of our assertion from timelines and writings and departure dates and all, at this particular time in Vrindavan, we can assume they were in their 30s and 40s, late 30s to early 40s, as they began to write all of these different scriptures like that. So it's one of my projects to try and see if it's possible to put this information together. So stay tuned. So, at any rate, Vallabhacharya was there, and at this time, as I mentioned, Jiva Goswami had come to Vrindavan, and he was studying under Rupa Goswami, and he was assisting Rupa Goswami. He was actually, at this particular time, he was fanning Rupa Goswami and Vallabhacharya as they were discussing. Now, the point they were discussing, it mentions that Rupa Goswami was presenting his opening verses to the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu to Vallabhacharya, another very learned Vaishnava from a different sampradaya, but very advanced in his learning. And so he was presenting to him, and, Vallabha had some ideas, like, well, maybe this isn't exactly correct. There's a few mistakes here. You might want to correct this, and this, like that. So they were discussing in this way, and in due course of time, Vallabha had to go to take his bath in the Jamuna, so he left to take his bath. And at that time, Jiva Goswami excused himself on the pretense of going to the Jamuna to collect water for Rupa Goswami. So he went there, and he bumped into Vallabhacharya, as he intended to. Now keep in mind, Jiva Goswami is understood in not only Vaishnava, but in many academic circles to be the most erudite scholar of the last 500 years. I mean, just amazing knowledge and literature and verses and prolific writing. So he approached Vallabhacharya and he said, excuse me, but I do take some exception to your correcting Rupa Goswami. And so he sat down and he discussed philosophy with Vallabha, and completely presented the points very nicely. And so, in this way, Vallabhacharya was quite impressed. This young student of Rupa's, Jiva Goswami, is very, very knowledgeable. So, a couple of days later, he was back visiting Rupa before he was departing from Vrindavan, and he commented, oh, by the way, I had a discussion with this disciple of yours, Jiva Goswami. Very intelligent young man. I'm very amazed by his scholarship. We discussed various points, and he corrected my mistake in correcting you. My understanding is now clear, and I just wanted to apologize for that. Oh, Rupa Goswami made no big deal about it, So, in due course of time, Vallabha left, and Jiva called for Rupa. And Rupa came in, and Rupa said the following to him. To whom we respect as our guru, and to whom we offer our obeisances, you are ready to debate as if you were on an equal level. So Rupa Goswami was saying, Balabacharya, who I respect as my guru, and to whom I offer my obeisances, you, my disciple, think you are on the equal level and can debate with him. He said, this is not at all polite. What he spoke was for my benefit, to correct me. He said, but you could not tolerate that. Therefore, you should leave this place and return home until such a point that you can control your senses and your mind. Then you may return to Vrindavan. Now leave. Can you imagine how devastated Jiva Goswami would be? He's the personal assistant of Rupa Goswami, assisting with writing, laying out his tablets and taking care of all of his personal needs. So Rupa Goswami had nothing to do but concentrate on the Bhakti Shastras. And now, due to what he perceives as a minor offense, he's been banned from Vrindavan by Rupa. Thrown out. Leave Vrindavan. You're not qualified to stay here. Oh, but of course you see the sweet, polite words which with Rupa did it. He didn't, lose his cool and throw a fit or whatever. Just, very, very nice like this. So, hearing the decision of his uncle, Jiva Goswami, all right, I'll leave. And he proceeded eastwards into the different further regions of Vrindavan. He got to Nandagat, and he came across an old dilapidated temple. Now, sometimes when this story is told, it mentions that he lived in a cave. But if you've seen some of these old stone temples, and you consider it being in the forest and dilapidated, it could easily be understood to be a cave. So either way, a cave or an old dilapidated temple that looked like a cave, he took up his residence there at Nandagat. And he gave up eating. And he would chant ceaselessly every day. So in due course of time, Sanatana Goswami is doing his parikrama around Vrindavan area. And he comes to the place. And the villagers come to Sanatana and they say, there's this handsome young man, but he sits there crying all day, just chanting and not taking any food, and he's wasting away and becoming, just nothing. So Sanatana Goswami went to see him, and he saw, why, this is my nephew, Jiva Goswami. Jiva, what are you doing here? So Jiva explained the entire story to him, and he told him what had happened. So Sanatana Goswami picked him up from the ground and embraced him, and affectionately brought him back to the Vrindavan area where Rupa Goswami was staying. So he told him, he said, you just sit here, you wait here. So Sanatana went in and spoke with Rupa, and he went in by himself. And he happened to mention the name of Jiva Goswami. Just happened to mention, Jiva. And then Sanatana questioned, well, but why isn't he here? And Rupa Goswami explained. So Sanatana Goswami then said to Rupa Goswami that, it's astounding to me, but you are neglecting one of the instructions of Mahaprabhu. Jiva Goswami thought in his mind, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I've established deities. Which instruction have I neglected? He said, Mahaprabhu has instructed us to be Jiva Doya, kind to all the jivas. But you're neglecting this jiva, Jiva Goswami. So Rupa Goswami said, all right, bring him in. So he brought him in. And it mentions that when he saw his forlorn and pale and, emaciated condition, that Rupa Goswami's heart was touched, and he personally nursed him back to proper health there until he was very satisfied. So then he entrusted him, now that you are healthy again, I want you to take the responsibility of proofreading all of my writings. Imagine that. Rupa Goswami's proofreader. Some of us here in Alachua get the opportunity to proofread articles for the Back to Godhead magazine. I've had a few people offer to proofread some of the articles I publish in the local newsletter. Apparently I'm not very good at that. So imagine, though, being the proofreader for Rupa Goswami. How exciting! How wonderful that must be. So, in any way, in this way, a very, very nice example is shown of the relationship between the guru and the disciple, between the spiritual master and the student. In this way, how they complement each other, how they may be strict and how one's submissive, but then how by that submission one can actually take the heart of the spiritual master. We saw this example also in the story of Lokanath and Narottam Das Thakur. So, anyway, in due course of time, Rupa Goswami finished writing his two prominent books, plays, which we mentioned he developed the outline for, Lalita Madhava and Vidagdha Madhava. Now, after writing Lalita Madhava, he gave a copy of it to Raghunath Das Goswami to read. And Lalita Madhava, it's a description of Krishna's pastimes after he leaves Vrindavan. And so the entire work is filled with this intense mood of separation by the Brijbasis. And so when reading this book, Raghunath Das Goswami began to cry day and night, feeling the intensity of the Brijbasis' feelings of separation that were presented by Rupa Goswami. So he was completely absorbed in this point, and he was almost ready to leave his body. This is described in the Bhakti Ratnakar, that how he was just so overwhelmed in this way, he was ready to leave his body. So he began, it mentions he practically became deranged in his mind from sadness and lost all patience. So at any way, after assuming that Raghunath Das Goswami would have read the manuscript and giving any proofreading or corrections, whatever, Rupa Goswami went to him and asked for the manuscript back. And Raghunath Das clasped it to his chest and wouldn't let go of it. He said, "No, I cannot give this up." He said, "I cannot part with this at all." So Rupa Goswami thought, what am I going to do? So to compensate for that, he wrote the Dana Keli Kamudi. And the Dana Keli Kamudi is a different mood altogether. And it's filled with the explanations and descriptions of Krishna's Vrindavan Leela. So he traded Raghunath Das Goswami. Here, I'll give you this one. You give me that one, please. You know, like with a little child. No, you give me this. I'll give you that. So he got Raghunath Das to give him back Lalita Madhava, and he gave him this Dana Keli Kamudi. And Raghunath Das's mood immediately changed, reading about all of Krishna's Vrindavan pastimes. Very, very happy like this. So this is a very wonderful way. Now, there was another time it mentions that the Rupa Goswami and his associates were there in Vrindavan, and they were discussing the different feelings of ecstatic love between Radha and Krishna and their different associates. And the discussion got quite intense, quite deep in its mood. And it mentions that some of the Vaishnavas were feeling very faint of heart, and some were passing out, and some were developing very, very heavy feelings internally. And it mentions at one point that Rupa Goswami, he breathed on one of the Vaishnavas who were there, and his breath was so hot that it actually caused a boil to erupt immediately on the skin of the Vaishnava he breathed on. Now, elsewhere it's described that tears are of different kinds, that tears of separation are hot. So this mood of separation was so intense like that, anger and separation and distress at being separated like that, you know. So this very, very intense thing. Actually, on this point, I was going to mention a little later when we talked about the Samadhi of Rupa Goswami, but right across from Rupa Goswami's Samadhi is the Grantha Samadhi. This is the Samadhi of the books of Rupa Goswami. Some of the books Rupa Goswami wrote were of such a deep, esoteric explanation and understanding of the pastimes of Radha and Krishna and their associates that Jiva Goswami in his intense wisdom understood these cannot be perceived by the normal people. If they read these, they will not understand what's being spoken here. It's too far above them. So he had them placed into Samadhi, cemented into the ground where they would not be taken out like that. So his concern was more for the well-being of the conditioned jivas that might read these books and develop a misunderstanding and thus impede their devotional development than it was for the sense of getting all of Rupa Goswami's books out. He felt that there were certain books, and this would be a good point to read this, certain books that were essential. There's actually 16 particular books that are described as essential in Rupa Goswami's writings. Sri Hamsadutta, the Sri Uddhava Sandesh, Sri Krishna Janmatiti Vidhi. This is an explanation of how to observe the Janmashtami celebration for Krishna. It's a very, very interesting book. Brihat Radha Krishna Gonadesha Dipika, and the Lagu Radha Krishna Gonadesha Dipika, Stavamala, Vidagdha Madhava, and Lalita Madhava. These are the two plays we mentioned, Krishna's Dwarka pastimes and Krishna's Vrindavan pastimes. And then the Dana Keli Kamudhi, which is Krishna's immediate pastimes that he gave to Raghunath, as we were just discussing. Then, of course, the two books that we, as followers of Srila Prabhupada, are very familiar with, the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which Srila Prabhupada translated as the Nectar of Devotion, and the Upadeshamrita, which Srila Prabhupada translated as the Nectar of Instruction. The Ujjvali Nilamani, the Mathura Mahima, which is the discussion all about Mathura, Padyavali, the Natika Chandrika, and the Lagu Bhagavatamrita. So this list is given in the Chaitanya Charitamrita as the 16 most prominent books of Rupa Goswami. Excuse me. So, by this point, as we mentioned, Rupa Goswami had discovered the Govindaji deity, and Sanatana Goswami had discovered the deity of Madan Mohan, and they had established both of them, and some personalities had come forward and built different temples and this and that. I believe at this same point is about the time that Gopal Bhatta has worshipped his shalagrams, and Radharaman deity has appeared from his Damodar Shila. So at this point, Rupa Goswami begins to wonder, where is Vrindavan? Where is Vrindavan itself? Where is the deity of Vrindadevi to be found, this grove of Vrindavan? So he was thinking in this way, and one night Vrindadevi appeared to him in a dream and said, if you go to Brahmakund, you will find me there. This is where you can have my darshan. So the next morning when he awoke, he took his bath, did his puja for his deity, and then he went to Brahmakund, and he began to look everywhere around Brahmakund. And suddenly it mentions he saw a heavenly damsel whose bodily effulgence defeated the luster of gold and illuminated all the directions by her very presence. And in this way, he could understand this was Vrindadevi, and that this area was known as Vrindavan. What else do we have? There were some very nice prayers that, of course, we started off with some prayers. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu and the Chaitanya Charitamrita both have these nice prayers. Just as the Lord enlightened the heart of Lord Brahma with the details of the creation, and thus made the manifestation of the cosmos possible, so Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu eagerly impregnated within the heart of Rupa Goswami the spiritual potency that would allow him to revive Krishna's Vrindavan pastimes, which had been lost to the memory of all jivas. This is from the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And then it mentions that when Mahaprabhu gave Rupa the order to write the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, this was when they met in Prayag, he specifically said to him that he wanted him to write this book. And so Rupa Goswami starts his book with this introductory prayer, that I worship the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead known as Lord Chaitanya Dev. From his inspiration, I have set out to write this book, even though I am nothing but an ignorant wretch. Now, after hearing this last hour of glorification of Rupa Goswami, we can hardly think of Rupa Goswami as he describes himself, as an ignorant wretch. But this is the mood of the acharyas, that they do think of themselves in a very menial position in this way, despite the fact that they are predominantly the main assistants of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and that they are specifically there to uncover the holy places, write the Shastras, establishing the worshipping of these deities that were established by Brajanam, this grandson of Krishna. They nonetheless think very humbly of themselves. So humbly that they refuse to accept service. There was one time Rupa Goswami was living in I forget exactly which place it was. Radhakund, yes. And he had a desire. He was thinking it would be very nice if I could prepare some sweet rice for Sanatana Goswami. But alas, I'm just a mendicant begging. I don't have any of these things. But anyway, if I could, I would. So at this point, a young village girl, very beautiful little cowherd girl, came, and she said, Swami, please, the villagers have sent me to bring these alms to you. Here is some milk, here is some rice, here is some sugar, here is some sweet bananas. They have asked me to bring this to you. Oh, what was the occasion? Oh, they're simply having me given charity to the local pundits, to the sadhus, so I've brought to you. Oh, that's very nice of you. Okay, thank you. And then she went away. So he began to think, how wonderful. I was simply thinking if I could prepare this for you. So then he prepared a fire and he began to cook. Now, it's interesting. The Goswamis were excellent cooks. You know, we read in the qualities, the 64 qualities of the gopis, that they were all expert at everything. I mean, not only cooking and garland making and dressing, but carpentry and metallurgy and jewelry and all these different things. Yeah. So it's an interesting thing to go to the Chaitanya Charitamrita sometime and read the 64 qualities of the gopis. You'll be quite amazed at the things they could do. Build a whole house. So at any rate, he was an expert cook. So he had these things. So he decided, all right, let me cook this nice sweet rice. So he cooked the sweet rice up, and in this way he prepared it. And then Sanatana Goswami took a turn. Sanatana Goswami tasted it. He said, oh, this is such excellent sweet rice. How did you come across it? And he told him, he said, well, I had this desire that I wanted to, and then he told him the whole story. And Sanatana Goswami said, do you realize that Sri Radha has personally brought you these ingredients? You have desired to serve me, and therefore she has served you, and now I am accepting service from the hand of Sri Radha. That personality whom we desire to serve in our life has served us. Don't desire this anymore. So Sanatana kind of spoke to him in that way. Anyway, so we also, there's a wonderful pastime because Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami, they followed in the mood of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that they would not go on top of Govardhan Hill, because the Gopinath deity, the Govindaji deity of Madhavendra Puri, no, that's much, much later, I'm sorry, of Vrindavan, was there on top of the hill, and they didn't want to go up there. So when the Muslims were coming and preparing to attack, then what happened was that the deities were moved to different places. So some of the deities were brought down to other villages and tried to hide them near the pujaris, and some were buried, as we saw earlier. So in this way, the Gopal deity from Vrindavan came to Mathura as they were trying to protect him from attack. And so in this way, Rupa and Sanatana got to see him as he went on his procession through to Mathura like that. So anyway, these are just some of the pastimes of Rupa Goswami. We finished about our hour's slot here this evening, and we have tried to present a little bit. There's a wonderful ocean of the pastimes of Rupa Goswami, and we are very fortunate that his two most important books for our neophyte stage in the rate, the Nectar of Devotion, or the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and the Nectar of Instruction, the Upadeshamrita, which are both detailed instructions for those of us on the path of Vaidhi Bhakti, on the developing stage of devotional service. Before we get to the higher level of spontaneous love, they're very instructive for us on how to advance to that point. So we're very fortunate that Srila Prabhupada has presented these books for us. And as we read these two books, we can try and appreciate the mood that Rupa Goswami wrote these books in, and imbibe that within our heart, and trying to develop that type of sense of humility that he showed in his dealings with his associates as we advance in the path of devotional service. So we'll finish there for this evening. If those of you in the chat room, any of you have any questions, anything you would like to address to us, we will make an effort. I'll try and do the best I can to answer any questions that are there. Joseph or Gita. Safe Juna. I think this is the first time, Safe Juna, I believe this is the first time you've been in our chat room. Maybe you could just let us know where you're from to try and get an idea of where different devotees are joining us from. Joseph asked a question here, a little off topic. Well, if it's about Krishna consciousness, we won't call it off topic. You mentioned earlier that Srila Prabhupada's arrival in New York. I thought you might like to know that a good friend that I had the good fortune to hear a lecture at the Boston Temple by Yagnapurush, who oversees 26 2nd Avenue. Yes, I know Yagnapurush very, very well. My wife and I were in Brooklyn when he was just inquiring about Krishna consciousness. We assist in helping to bring Yagnapurush around to devotional service. He's a very, very wonderful devotee, very solid, very steady, hundreds of times more advanced than I am. And his overseeing of that 26 Second Avenue project has been a real boon and a blessing for the rest of the society. That's certainly a fact. Yes, very nice. Actually, many devotees who never had Srila Prabhupada's association have developed a very great attraction by being able to take responsibilities such as what Yagna Purush has done. Gita, Hare Krishna, you're from India. Whereabouts in India, Gita? And are you tuning in from India right now? Or are you living here in America and coming from India? I'm quite curious about that. Get an answer from her in just a moment here.
Prabhu, can I ask a question?
Yeah, Abai, my tech guy here, who I would be lost without. What's up, Abai?
You were mentioning how Srimati Radharani appeared to Rupa Goswami, provided him with the ingredients for the sweet rice.
Mm.
Was there a second time that she appeared to Rupa Goswami? Or was it 2 times ever that she appeared to serve?
She appeared to them a variety of times. Her and Sanatana. There was also a similar experience with Sanatana. There's 2 or 3 instances described where Krishna would come or Radharani would hold her shawl over them to protect the sun. I think that was Rupa also.
Mm-hmm.
And then once where Krishna had to come to keep the tigers away like that. Is that good?
Yeah.
Gita, you didn't get an answer to us. We were just curious if you were tuning in from India or if you were listening here in the States and coming from India. Joseph, thank you very much for your kind words. Gita's based in India. Wow, that means it's the morning program over there, right? All right, well, if no one has anything else, if anybody has any other comments they'd like to make, otherwise we're going to finish up for the evening. And, Tamil Nadu. Gita, it's very nice to have you join us from such a long distance. We do have this program every Monday evening. Those of you that may not be familiar, if you tune into the main page on Krishna.com, you'll find a variety of live webcasts throughout the week. I happen to do this one on Wednesday. There's one on Japa on Tuesdays, I believe. And there's one on the Bhagavad Gita on Thursdays. And then Wednesdays and Fridays are live bhajans, both from here in Alachua and in the Manor in London. So these are opportunities the devotees at Krishna.com have arranged for those of you out there who may not be near a temple or who are near a temple and one extra association to get that. So with that, we'll finish for tonight. And once again, we thank you for joining us in an evening in the lives of the Vaishnava Acharyas. Hare Krishna.